cloning is one of the functionalities about virtual machines that really impressed the whole world the first time you saw it. It's kind of like that thing, you can remember where you were the day Elvis died, if you're old enough. You can remember where you were the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated, if you're old enough. And if you're a real nerd, you can remember the first day you saw a virtual machine get cloned, okay? That's sick to some people, but trust me, it's a big deal to some of us, all right? But anyway, cloning is absolutely the fastest way to create multiple identical virtual machines. But a better way to say that is it's the fastest way to create multiple identical machines, computers, whatever you want to call it. This is even faster than installing an OS in a new virtual machine. Well, duh, no kidding. We don't have to wait for copying files, for installing drivers, or any of that kind of stuff. We don't even have to have any disks. It's even faster than copying a virtual machine. Now, talk about in other places in the course here about copying a virtual machine, but when you get ready to do that, cloning is usually the way to go. Now, when you start to think about needing multiple copies of identical machines, you have two options when you start thinking in the direction of cloning, and that is to create a full clone, what's called a full clone, or what's called a linked clone. And these really kind of have their special purposes, so let's talk about those here. First of all, a full clone. When I create a full clone, I am creating a complete and independent copy of a virtual machine. Now, this is not the fastest way to create a machine, but you know what, compared to what it used to take to get a piece of hardware, to get a new server, to prepare the drive, to install the operating system and all that, this is incredible. This takes a little bit longer than to create a linked clone. And now let's talk about linked clones. The bottom line with the full clone, before I leave that, is right here. It is a complete and independent copy of a virtual machine. Now, a linked clone has kind of a unique purpose. This is a copy of a virtual machine, but it's made from a snapshot of the parent machine. So when we create a linked clone, what we're really doing is more or less taking a snapshot of the parent machine, turning that into a separate virtual machine, but then we're tying it back to the original parent virtual machine. In other words, we're copying just enough information to make this thing be experienced and to function like a separate machine to an end user. But back there on the disk, it's really not a separate machine. It's kind of smoke and mirrors and software geek speak behind the scenes. Because what's happening is your linked clone is actually sharing some of the virtual disk space with the parent virtual machine. Now, this saves disk space, and it allows you to create a linked clone very quickly. Now, when would you need this? Well, if I'm working on a machine and I've written some code and I want some people to take a look at the code, maybe edit the code, maybe help me troubleshoot the code, I can peel off 3 or 4 linked clones really quickly, provide them to folks, and 3 or 4 different people can open them up and they can start to work right along with me on this. Now, when should you use a full clone? Well, anytime you need that fully independent machine, or when you need to install more or different software on the new machine. Now, why am I getting into that? Just hang on, okay? Now, when contact with the parent disk files cannot be guaranteed, because keep in mind, the full clone can just run as a machine. It doesn't need to contact the parent disk files. It doesn't care about the parent disk files. It is its own machine and it will run. So if you're in a situation where you need to clone, but you can't really guarantee that this new machine's always going to be able to reach the parent disk files over the network, guess what? You just convinced yourself that you need a full clone. Now, what about a linked clone? When should I use one of those? Well, here's the bottom line. When having multiple virtual machines sharing the same C drive will not be an issue. Now, you can't install new software on a linked clone 99.9% of the time simply because of this one issue right here. Now, you also, when you're using a linked clone, you probably want to do this when you need to make a copy really quickly. You don't want them all to be totally unique machines, and you can guarantee access to the parent disk files, because without that clone, that linked clone, being able to contact those parent disk files, guess what? It can't find its C drive, and you know how machines get when they can't see their parent drive, okay, or their C drive. So anyway, that's kind of an overview of cloning, and over the next video or two we're going to go out there and work with cloning just a little bit and talk about some more of the nuances.